Welcome to another episode of The Dissection. Let's cut straight to it. There was an exchange in Parliament this week which led many to think that the chairperson of the Higher Education Committee was up to something nefarious, something malicious, that he was trying to cover something up and to protect one of the most powerful ministers and one of the most powerful leaders of the ANC. You may have seen this clip by now, but if you haven't, this is what happened, and stay with me because it's important that we see what happened. Then I'm going to give you the update.
DG, have you made appointments of board chairpersons of sitters?
Yeah, Honorable Lonzi, we also addressed that part that...
No, Chair. I think, Chair,
No, hold on, legally.
it's going to be a problem, Chair, if you are not going to allow me to use my 15 minutes in the manner that I want to use it, Chair.
No,
I hope you have paused my time.
No, I have. But we also have a legislative prerogative to assist one another. The DG will not know. So if you ask him a question...
But you are answering for him, Chair.
No, on the legislative...
But he's here. You can't say the DG will not know. He must say to me, I don't know.
No problem.
And then I move. Now you are becoming his lawyer.
No, Honorable Lonzi. The DG does not appoint. Members...
Chairperson, I'm not asking you. I'm asking the DG.
Honorable Lonzi.
But I don't understand,
Lonzi.
Chair.
No,
I'm asking the DG, have you made board appointments of sitters?
He can't make it, and I'm trying to assist
But he can answer for himself. He's here. Why are you protecting him?
Members wanted to ask that at
Chairperson, why are you protecting him? He's here. He can speak.
I'm not protecting him.
He understands English.
No,
he can simply say no. You are going to have to kick me out here. I'm going to utilize my 15 minutes. When other members are using their 15 minutes, I keep quiet. Don't disrupt anyone. These are skills authorities. We're sitting with almost half of the population of young people in South Africa. They are unemployed. At least 2.5 million of those people are NEET. They are not in education. They are not in training. And then we've got sitters that must put their family members, that must put their friends, that must put ANC members. We put higher education. And then we're told here that we can't ask those questions. We're not here to come and be bodyguards of the department. We're not here to speak on behalf of the department. We're here to speak for the youth. We're here to speak for the students in South Africa. They must know what is happening in the sitters. What is happening in the polls. We're not going to allow it. We're not here to protect the department. We're not here to protect the department.
Can't be given problems.
I've got 15 minutes. I must be allowed to utilize my 15 minutes.
Who comes late to a meeting?
I must be allowed to utilize my 15 minutes. You just have to stop from asking. Why must I stop from asking questions?
That thing will be discussed in the next meeting. Now you want to abuse us. You think that you are the only champion of the poor. You think that you are the only champion of the poor. Because now you can speak as you want. Now you must get out. You cannot abuse us. How do you do a resolution?
Hello. Fine.
We're tired. You've been talking to us here. We've been wasting our time.
Let's think about what we just watched. An MP was dragged out of Parliament for demanding accountability about political appointments. That's got to be troubling. If you have not been following the story, let me bring you up to speed. There was a list that was circulating about appointments to SETA boards by the Minister of Higher Education. On that list were prominent names in the ANC, and two of those names trace back to the Minister of Minerals and Energy and the chairperson of the ANC, Gwede Mantsahe. One of the people mentioned was his son, Buyambo Mantsahe, and the other, his advisor, Gwebinkunla Konde. Mr. Konde was actually a director in the Higher Education Ministry briefly, and he was dismissed by Blade Nzimande due to allegations of financial mismanagement and procurement irregularities. So this list and these appointments drew different type of raised eyebrows, and legitimately so. A son of the ANC chairperson and an advisor of the ANC chairperson being appointed by another minister to be in critical positions in these seaters. This was something that was being raised as an issue of concern. And as you can see, the Member of Parliament, Sihle Lonzi, took the Director General to task and tried to get clarity on these appointments, right? So if you're not familiar with SETAs and what their role is, South Africa has 21 sector education and training authorities, or SETAs. These are public entities which are mandated to facilitate skills development in specific economic sectors, from manufacturing and mining to tourism and health. Their job is to manage and disperse funding for learnerships, internships, and training programs. That's a serious job, right? And once you hear manage and disperse funding, you know that there's going to be controversy, there's going to be drama, there's going to be krinkum, higi haga, right? So if you've ever applied for a government-funded internship or artisan training program, chances are that it was actually funded by a SETA. In 2023, SETAs administered roughly 15 billion in skills development levies. That's state power. And more crucially, its influence over the future of millions of unemployed youths. We'll talk about that a little bit later. 15 billion is not small change. In the wrong hands, that money can end up in the hands of the hosh fathers who are looking for conquer queens with yellow thighs, hosh karimaimas, kari uli China. Hey, those men have a disproportionate relationship with hosh karimaimas. The men who get their hands on tenders. You see the hosh karimaimas posting on Instagram, buying Range Rovers, living good life there. Hey, the things you see. So it's state power, and more crucially, its influence over the future of employment in South Africa for young people who are desperate to get out of poverty, help their families realize their dream, and help their families change their lives. Let's go back to the silencing of the MP and the ejection of the Member of Parliament. The idea that he was not entitled to the answer is not compelling to me, I must be honest. I listened to the chairperson discuss his reasons, both in Parliament and also when he was asked by Clement Manyathela. And he made this argument that it's not the Director General's role, that the minister appoints the board members, and that the CEOs of those board members then account to the department, but not necessarily to the Director General. So I listened to all of that, and I think it's important to really think through whether or not that's credible. The chairperson said the question could not and should not be answered because the Director General did not know anything and was not the right person to ask. But if those CEOs account, the CEOs of the SETAs, if they account to the department and the Director General is in charge of the department under the minister, then surely the Director General does play a role and is likely to have pertinent information that is important to know. In addition, I want to say that the professional courtesy which would be extended to the Director General, the necessity for the minister to have a good relationship, and the tendency that anybody who's in that kind of a position would have to cultivate a good working relationship with the Director General would likely lead the minister letting that Director General know what's happening, who he's appointing, who she's appointing, and keeping the Director General in the loop. It seems to me far-fetched and implausible that the Director General would not have an understanding, having worked in the department for a protracted period of time, having listened to the reports from his deputies around what the CEOs are saying, and obviously being the person who is in charge of the operational issues of the department. It seems to me unlikely that he would not know and would not be informed and would not be kept in the loop. But even if it was the case that the Director General did not know, it seems to me irrational to prevent him from providing the public that answer. I think the answer should have been given, even if he did not know. To block any answer at all from the Director General deprived the public from getting key information and did come across to me as a heavy-handed approach from the chairperson of the committee. And this is not the first time that we've seen chairpersons of parliamentary committees seeming to act in ways that are inconsistent with law, inconsistent with public interest, and in ways that actually seem to be driven by a motive of pleasing their political principles as opposed to executing their duties as committee chairpersons in an unbiased fashion. A very recent example is what happened on the Standing Committee on Finance. If you recall, issues were raised at the time when the fiscal framework was being deliberated upon about the procedure, about decisions that were being made in that committee as the budget fiscal framework was being discussed and taken to the parliament on the next day. Those issues were ignored. The chairperson basically pushed through with the issue. And then in court, the issues were then raised and there was no justifiable defense which could be given. Even if you think about the issue of Phala and the Section 89 independent panel report that was deliberated upon by Parliament, because Parliament had to choose whether to go to actually have an impeachment committee which would find out the critical facts and do an investigation further to what the Section 89 panel could do. When you were listening to the reasoning being given by the MPs about why they were doing certain things, it seemed to me that they were pushing forward with a political party agenda over and above the interests of the public. They ignored the reasoning given by the former Chief Justice Ngobo, somebody who's a well-esteemed jurist, and the other esteemed lawyers, professionals who work in the field, who are raising issues that they said, listen, there are many questions which Parliament has to take a role in getting to the bottom to. They steamrolled and went through with that. Same thing happened with the Public Protector Report recommendations against President Zuma. Even Balula admitted as much later that we just voted to protect Zuma, even though we didn't believe in what we were voting. This kind of behavior where, sometimes the speaker does similar things where various speakers, a question will be asked to the minister, and then the minister will just give a response which is not actually an answer, right? Because you can ask me what's the weather and I can say water is delicious. You asked me a question, I responded, but the response that I provided you is not an answer. And if it was an exam, I would fail. And we've seen people then in that speaker position saying, they responded. You got a response. You may not like the response that you got, but you must take it. We keep seeing this type of stuff. And I don't think that it's healthy for democracy and it's good behavior. So the latest development to the story, after they did all of that, after they got Lonzi out, is that the story went viral on social media. People were talking about this left, right, and center. And the latest development in the story is that the Minister of Higher Education has cancelled the appointment of Gwede Mantsahe's son to being the chairperson of the CETA board, as well as the other appointments that were mentioned and were on the list. A statement was released late last night on Thursday, the 15th of May, saying the following. Following broader consultations with stakeholders in the post-school education and training sector and their council regarding the appointment of chairpersons of the boards of sector education and training authorities, I have decided to recalibrate the process. Just a little recalibration there, which was overseen by an independent panel. I call on all relevant constituencies to nominate candidates. The integrity of the process for appointments will be made in terms of the guidelines as outlined in the Skills Development Act of 1998 as amended. I've taken the decision to withdraw previous appointments in response to public concerns. Further, I take this decision in the interest of good governance, transparency, to ensure accountability of the appointment process. In this regard, I will reopen the process by issuing a government gazette calling for nominations for a limited run of 7 days. I will also establish a new independent panel to process the nominations and recommend candidates. This process will put emphasis on merit, competencies, and relevant experience. That's the statement. So concerns have led to reversals. So this statement actually does prove and confirm that the list that was being circulated was accurate and that the concerns being raised were valid. If not for the actions taken by Sihle Lonzi, this issue would not have gone viral. This issue would not have become topical. These appointments would have gone through. So I think it's fair to say that the Cader Texas Ranger Sihle Lonzi has struck again. The Cater Undertaker has struck again. Boom. Remember the Undertaker? Boom. Then you had the pallbearer. Boom. I think that the Cater Undertaker has struck again. He's wrestling with the ANC in those committees. Earlier this year, he exposed that one of the cadres who was trying to get a job in the NYDA was not qualified to do so. And not only that, was also not qualified to be a researcher in the municipality, which was his previous job. When he appeared in front of the Portfolio Committee on Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, the ANC Youth League treasurer, Zwelo Masilela, was exposed in a bad way. Sihle Lonzi, the Cater Undertaker, was waiting for him with receipts and the pallbearer. Ooh, tell us your qualifications. Ooh, it was a movie. You remember that? The ANC Youth League treasurer, Zwelo Masilela, attempted to secure the bag and to become a member of the National Youth Development Agency, but he was crucified with no resurrection after he was exposed for lacking qualifications and after 2 MPs scored him 0 in the interview process. You don't remember that whole thing? He was scored 0 out of 50. 0 out of 50. By the EFF MP, the Undertaker himself, Sihle Lonzi, and the MK Party MP, Mabel Rekwana. So it was a Gwaza situation, a fighter situation. Blocked. Here's the exchange that actually went viral and exposed the issues with Zwelo Masilela's qualifications.
In 2016 until 2023, again in your CV, you say you were a senior researcher at Mbombela Municipality, Nelspruit in South Africa. Now, it would have made sense to me if you had completed your diploma in 2011, but you have since clarified it to us that you in fact completed it in 2021. So it means you would have been a senior researcher for 5 years without a post-matric qualification. My question to you is, if we were to appoint you, recommend you, and the president were to appoint you to lead the NYDA, would you appoint or employ someone without a post-matric qualification to be a senior researcher in any process or department within the National Youth Development Agency? Because you were a senior researcher and earned a senior researcher salary for 5 years without a post-matric qualification. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. No, I think I would not do that. Maybe I must maybe the question should have been, what is the circumstance that led to that? Because I did not apply for a post of senior researcher. Because the problem, I had to put the CV accurately to the fact of the positions I occupied, because I didn't want to mislead anybody. Now, what would have happened in the instance, I never applied to be a senior researcher chair. I applied to be a PA and working in the office of the chief whip in the municipality there. Now, because I was deployed in a political office, there was movement. They just placed me as a senior researcher. I could not say, no, I don't qualify. They placed me. They did what they call placement. And then they placed me as a senior researcher. For that matter, for 2 years, I spent that 2 years without being given proper functions in that responsibility. And that was my problem. It was the problem of the municipality. I'm on record complaining about those attributes. And so it was never my making, chair, that I applied for a post that I knew that I don't qualify for. It was the making of the institution which frustrated me at that particular time. And I had issues with it at that time. Now, it was not me. It was just an issue of placement. Because if you were to check, it was just the same institution that I worked in. It was not like I moved to another department, to another institution. I still worked within the same institution. So that was the reality. It was a frustration for me, and I had to enjoy that, and that was it. Thank you, Chair.
Here's the thing. Many of the problems in South Africa are not solved because of issues similar to what we've been discussing here. The funds are allocated. South Africa is not actually a poor country. The budget is there. It's just that the budget never gets to the intended destination. Not only are the funds allocated and the institutions exist, those institutions are unfortunately then used to fund and sustain the political elites, and those who are passionate about doing the work are put on the sidelines or have to report to a political appointee who does not care about the work, who's not qualified to do the work, who's rushing to enjoy the weekend and see his Hosh Karimaima. That's the reality. Think about the fact that this happened this week, this issue of SETAs. This was the same week where the quarterly labor force employment data was released, and that data was alarming. In fact, in the Ramaphosa years, it's important to just be aware that the unemployment problem has been getting significantly worse. In 2018, unemployment was at 27.1% in Q4 of 2018. And then in the first quarter of 2025, it's at 32.9%. And if you look at the expanded definition, it's much worse. The numbers that you see in the long-term unemployment data are also pretty bad there. In 2018, there were 4.3 million South Africans in long-term unemployment. In 2025, there are 6.2 million people in long-term unemployment. Unemployment on the expanded definition is at 43%. Youth unemployment for the ages between 15 to 34 is at 60% on the expanded definition. Extremely worrying. Extremely worrying. Even graduate unemployment has increased under the Ramaphosa administration. In Q4 of 2018, graduate unemployment was at 6.7%. But in Q1 of 2025, graduate unemployment is now at 11.7%. That's a decline of 75% from 2018 up until 2025 in the Ramaphosa years, the New Dawn years, the good years, the billionaire years. This is a concern. It's a crisis. Because if you think about the promise of education, even that now is no longer delivering. So there's a crisis. And in that crisis, there's a necessity for skills. Skills training is particularly important. South Africa is currently undergoing a period of deindustrialization. The skills rankings for South Africa by the World Economic Forum were very low. Overall, in the skills ranking, South Africa ranked 90th out of 141 countries. Going deeper into that skills ranking, you can see the following. Quality of vocational training, 119 out of 141 countries. Digital skills among the population, 126th out of 141 countries. Critical thinking in teaching, 95th out of 141 countries. Skills of future workforce, 107th out of 141. Pupil to teacher ratio in primary schools, 109 out of 141. Those rankings are not good. They show that there's a skills crisis, there's an unemployment crisis. Give people skills, and that will solve a lot of this unemployment crisis that we're currently seeing. So to me, it's definitely clear that these SETAs, if properly managed, can make a big contribution to providing the skills necessary to make South Africa a manufacturing giant. Right now, 4% of the manufacturing output is furniture. Doesn't make sense to me. Right now, 3.9% of the manufacturing output is textiles. South Africa should not be importing textiles from China. The electrical manufacturing components accounts only for 2% of manufacturing output. 2%. That's not enough. Most of the manufacturing is in the primary sector. That's not enough to shift the unemployment crisis numbers. That's not enough to put, people in a position where they can pursue careers that will be profitable and help them change their families' lives. It's clear that SETAs must be well run and well funded to make sure that these young people have a chance, that they have the skills to chase their dreams and to make something out of themselves. 60% of the people between the ages of 15 to 34 not working is a disaster. Those are the prime productive years. Those are the prime creative years in anyone's life. To be sitting on the bench, are we then surprised that so many young people end up taking nyaupe, becoming dependent on alcohol and all of these other things? Are we surprised? We shouldn't be. We shouldn't be, because 60% of them are being forced to sit on the bench. A generation should not be sitting on the economic bench because politicians are trying to give family members positions. A generation cannot be sitting on the bench so that a blesser can have funding to buy a Horsch Karimaima, a Range Rover, Lamborghini. I don't even know what they're buying, these Horsch Karimaimas. What are they buying Horsch Karimaimas out there? These blessers. Young people should not be sacrificed. Their futures should not be sacrificed so that someone can turn up at Konka or wherever people are turning up. Where are people turning up? Live, I don't know. You're meant to be in the government for the people, not to be a minister of enjoyment, intercontinental, monumental. Lahu. So congratulations to all of the people who brought this issue to the public attention and made it such that the minister got so uncomfortable she had to walk back this appointment of another minister's son to be a chairperson of a SETA board. Guys, let's talk in the comments. What do you think about this story? Who do you think gets the credit? The EFF, the DA, MK party? Let's have a conversation. I'll see you there.